Now, Home Affairs Minister Clare O'Neil has finally fronted the media today. This is 5 days after the latest illegal boat arrival. As expected, she tried to pin the blame on, you guessed it, Peter Dutton.
I've been a bit disappointed in recent days to see people that I actually respect in the opposition coming out and, telling untruths about this and calling into question aspects of this policy. The Commander of Operation Sovereign Borders has been really open. That provides an alternative narrative for people smugglers, and I ask them to stop doing it.
Steve Price, it's always the coalition's fault when there's a new boat, isn't it? But genuinely, was her response today good enough? Was it adequate?
It was pathetic. It's another train wreck interview. I mean, how she's still got her job and Andrew Giles as well. We say it every week when we catch up. I just can't understand how these ministers have survived. We've had 3 boats got to the actual coastline. People wandering around an Air Force base in remote northwest Western Australia. The latest one, a bunch of blokes from China. And she's saying that it's the opposition's fault that these boats are arriving. Can someone tell Clare O'Neil that prior to her government taking up office in Canberra, winning the election 2 years ago, we had no boats. Now they're in office and they've been there 2 years, the boats are back. Clare O'Neil, that's sending you a message. It's not a message coming from Peter Dutton or James Patterson or anyone on the opposition side. It's just that the people smugglers know inherently that when you're in charge, when Labor's in charge, the opportunity to come by boat starts again. And sure, they're sending them to Nauru, but how does these boats get in, drop these blokes off, the latest one, and the boat disappears? We're not even seeing the commander or whoever's running this operation arrested. I just can't believe she is so delusional.
I mean, there have been concerns that Peter Dutton and other media reports have raised. I think even Olivia Casely here on Sky News actually might have broken the story about an erosion in our aerial surveillance monitoring, which is part of the reason, they say, that boats are actually reaching our shores rather than being detected when they're still at sea. Do you think this... I mean, clearly, Bronwyn, there is something going wrong with the system.
The surveillance operation is pivotal. I've been out on those surveillance operations. When you go out in the surveillance aircraft, you're out there for 8 hours. And what has happened is that the Labor government has cut back the resources to allow them to fly as often. So it's fundamentally important that border surveillance and controls that were put in place by the now opposition were the ones that worked. Now, this government has watered it all down. And when we listen to Clare O'Neil or Mr Giles, there's only 2 things you can conclude. A, they're both stupid, or B, they really don't want the policies to work. And I suspect it's the latter. And therefore, when they can't defend themselves, what do they say? Oh, it's got to be somebody else's fault, couldn't possibly be mine. So we get this ridiculous, outlandish criticism of the opposition who are not the government and haven't been now for 2 years. I mean, it is ridiculous.
There is going to be a day when they're going to have to stop blaming the coalition for everything.
People are
Bronwyn, I'll tell you what we're going to do one week on the show. We're going to give you the names of Chris Bowen, Tony Burke, and get your assessment on every one of those hopeless, hapless ministers. Now, also news today that the Alice Springs youth curfew has been working so well that it's now been extended for another 6 days. So, as you know, this curfew runs from 6 o'clock at night to 6 o'clock in the morning. All, can we even call them children? Everyone under 18 has to stay indoors for that period. Steve, clearly this was going to work. Do you think, though, that there needs to be... I mean, what is the permanent solution? So it works for another 6 days and then what? It goes back to the situation that it was before?
Well, I saw the Chief Minister of the Northern Territory today make this announcement. When she said the word 6, I was hoping she was going to say 6 months at the very least, or maybe 6 weeks. I might have even been happy. This works. And I can't quite get my head around the fact the curfew lasts from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. and she said, well, we're going to stop it in 6 days because the children will be back at school. Well, that's in the daytime. I don't know what school's got to do with the curfew
Well, maybe
at
there's
night when
after-school
you've got kids.
activities. And maybe there's after-school activities. I don't know. Swimming, training,
You've got kids
football,
as young as
you need
10
to
years
get home
old
from.
running around stealing cars. I mean,
Yes.
seriously, what are they doing up there?
Yeah. Bronwyn, the question is, what is the long-term solution here?
Well, clearly the curfew is working. And I think, like Steve, to say another 6 days is just stupid. Because what you want to get is a pattern for the kids to understand that there are rules. And these are the rules that apply. But if you're only going to do it for what? Will it be 3 weeks all in all?
Yes.
That's not nearly long enough.
Yeah.
3 months maybe.
Yeah.
And let the pattern become the norm so that when the curfew is over, they'll still behave in that way. That's what you aim for with a curfew.